So, there I was, sitting at my desk, minding my own business, when Lisa, my boss and the creative director with a reputation for being a bit of a high-strung dynamo, actually spilled her entire personal mess to me. Not to Jenny, who wasn't exactly shy about sharing gossip, nor to one of the senior folks who might have been trained in this kind of crisis management. Nope, right to me, the junior copywriter who was just trying to keep his head down, deliver decent work, and maybe avoid eye contact during meetings. I still remember the exact moment she looked me dead in the eyes across the conference room table and muttered something that wasn't about deadlines or campaign concepts, but about, well, heartbreak, anxiety, and a complete loss of direction. And I just blinked like, what? How does a junior employee end up being the therapist for their boss? It's not something that's in the job description, that's for sure. The awkwardness hung in the air thick enough to cut with a spoon, or maybe just a really bad pun about agency life. Everyone else thought Lisa was this untouchable creative legend, so I guess the irony of her confiding in me, the guy who regularly forgot to refill the office coffee pot, wasn't lost on anyone. But what came after? Oh man, that was where the chaos kicked in. At first, it was just quick comments between project updates, like a little crack in her usually unshakable armor. But then her texts started showing up after hours, and suddenly my inbox was a mix of client briefs and, personal rants. Jenny caught me one day mid-conversation with Lisa, looking like I'd accidentally wandered into a therapy session instead of a brainstorming meeting, and just smirked. "Congrats," she said dryly. "You're officially her human diary." And just when I thought I might be able to put up some boundaries, Lisa raised the stakes and dropped a secret on me that truly made me pause. It wasn't just bad day stuff, it was raw, sensitive, the kind of thing that made me wonder if I was getting played. Am I helping her, or is she using me as a crutch? Meanwhile, Mark, the CEO, was his usual hands-off self but started showing up at weird times, throwing in cryptic comments that only made the situation more tangled. So yeah, that was the beginning of how I accidentally became my boss's confidant. What followed would test every nerve and keep me second-guessing everything about work, trust, and maybe even my own sanity. But maybe we start there, and I'll tell you how this whole mess unfolded from that one tiny accidental moment. I was a junior copywriter at this mid-sized ad agency downtown, just another square in the massive puzzle. Honestly, my day-to-day was pretty straightforward, churning out taglines, battling client revisions, and trying not to sound completely clueless during brainstorming sessions. None of my work ever made major waves, and I was perfectly okay with that. Keeping a low profile, delivering on deadlines, hoping no one noticed when I'd sneak an extra donut from the break room stash, that was my vibe. Then there was Lisa, the creative director with a reputation that preceded her like some kind of urban legend. Everyone in the office knew that Lisa demanded perfection, and she had this air about her like she was too busy running the agency's creative heart to bother with, well, anything else. Because of that, she usually gave off this untouchable vibe, kind of scary but impressive all at once. Most of us dealt with her by trying to interpret her barely contained intensity as a sign of pure genius. Jenny, my coworker, had a different take. She called Lisa the creative kraken, which, in hindsight, was probably more accurate than fun. Anyway, for months, I was just trying to keep my head down and avoid being the target of the kraken's wrath. Then, one evening, around what I think was the third round of client feedback for a campaign I was working on, I received an unexpected email from Lisa. Not your standard check-in or needs edits ASAP message. No, this one was different. More like a glimpse behind the curtain. Her email wasn't marked urgent or anything, but for some reason I opened it with this weird mix of curiosity and mild dread. It started off formal enough, hey, then quickly slid into something personal. Something about feeling overwhelmed and stuck, about doubts she wasn't sharing with anyone else. It was a major red flag for me because, well, what the heck was my boss doing pouring her heart out to a junior copywriter at midnight? Honestly, I didn't know if I should feel honored or just panic like, was this a trap? Did I accidentally walk into a performance review disguised as a therapy session? And more importantly, what was I supposed to do with this? Over the next few days, the emails kept coming. Not just short notes or occasional messages, but entire paragraphs of Lisa's worries, frustrations, and even doubts about her career choices. It was like the barrier I'd assumed was there between junior staff and the big boss suddenly cracked wide open, exposing this vulnerable, unfinished story. Jenny caught on pretty quickly. One afternoon, I was halfway through explaining a particularly confusing line in a client brief when she cornered me by the coffee machine, eyebrow cocked and grin barely contained. "So, you're officially Lisa's personal sage now?" she said with this perfect mix of sarcasm and amusement. "Does this mean I should prepare an office intervention or just request your resignation from therapist duties?" She had a point. It was weird. I'd gone from just another cog to strategic sounding board, minus the title or paycheck bump. Meanwhile, Mark, our CEO, was doing that CEO thing, mostly invisible but occasionally dropping in with cryptic comments. Like when he called me into his office for what I thought was feedback on a campaign and spent 5 minutes talking about the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership. It felt like a message aimed more at Lisa than me, but who knows? The situation started to blur boundaries fast. At first, it was easy to chalk it up to Lisa just venting to someone she trusted, or at least thought she could trust. But then came the text late at night, half confessions, half planning for the next day, but sprinkled with a side of personal crisis. I kept juggling my usual workload with this unintended role as her confidant, all while trying not to let it mess with my own sense of professionalism. It was awkward, though. More than awkward. Almost surreal, especially during meetings when Lisa would suddenly look at me with this unspoken expectation like, "You get me, right?" I'd blink back, mentally requesting subtitles for Boss Cryptic. And then, everything changed when she dropped a secret that wasn't just about a bad day at work or a stressful client pitch. This one was raw, complicated, and way too personal. It hit me like okay, where exactly are the lines here? Am I supposed to be the shoulder she leans on, or am I being pulled into a drama that's not mine to carry? Trust got messy, and suddenly I wasn't just questioning how this happened, it was who was really in control of the situation. There I was, caught between wanting to help and wanting to run for the hills, while the usual office rhythms kept buzzing around me, completely unaware or maybe silently amused by the chaos I was trapped in. It was like being inside a weird reality show where the stakes were emotional survival and job security. And yet, amidst all this turmoil, something kind of unexpected was bubbling up. Something about seeing Lisa, not as an untouchable creative shark, but as a real person navigating her own mess. But that's jumping ahead. For now, I was just sitting in the eye of this storm called Lisa's Confessions, wondering how I was supposed to handle what came next. Lisa's messages started innocuous enough little cracks in her armor, a sigh here, a grumble there. But over the weeks, it became this strange routine where I'd find myself half expecting a ping during lunch or right before I was about to slap my laptop shut for the day. It was like being on call for a very confused, very anxious creative director who nobody else seemed to notice was breaking down. One afternoon, I was knee-deep in a client brief when my phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. It simply read, "Can we talk? Not about work." Right? Because nothing says mid-week pick-me-up like face-to-face chats that don't involve budgets or deadlines. So, I reluctantly agreed to meet her in the conference room, the one with the view of the city skyline, which usually felt inspiring, but that day just felt like the setting for some kind of awkward therapy session. Lisa showed up looking different, not her usual high-strung power suit self. Her hair was a disheveled mess, and she had this exhausted but determined look. She sank into a chair and, without preamble, started talking about her brother. This wasn't the kind of small talk you typically share in an agency. They weren't just happy birthday updates or goodwill stories about family dinners. No, she was talking about years of unresolved tension, regret, stuff she'd never mentioned to anyone at work. I just sat there blinking, wondering how on earth I was roped into this deeply personal confessional. There was this part where she said, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm messing up everything, not just at work, but everywhere." And I remember thinking, yeah, same, but this wasn't my moment to share. Instead, I nodded, tried not to say anything stupid, and let her finish. The complexity of it all started to sink in, the fact that Lisa, this person who was the creative powerhouse and fearsome captain of the ship, was also, well, human, flawed, vulnerable, and oddly enough looking to me for some kind of anchor. Of course, Jenny wasn't blind to what was happening. One day after I'd left that conference room still trying to process it all, she cornered me and whispered, "You're like the office's unofficial Lisa whisperer. Just don't let her start sending you her grocery lists or Spotify playlists." Her sarcasm was a shield, but I could tell she was also a little concerned. It was weird to see someone who usually pranked others suddenly act like they were guarding me. Mark, our CEO, meanwhile, remained an enigma. Occasionally, he'd pop his head into my cubicle during the day with a cryptic smile. "Remember, leadership isn't just about vision, it's about heart," he said once, almost like a fortune cookie message. At first, I thought it was just corporate pep talk, but with everything unfolding, it felt like he was watching this mess play out with some secret insight. Then came the night that really tested me. Lisa sent me a message late. Like, uncomfortably late, with something I can only describe as a confession that felt way beyond the fragile vents about stress and doubts. I'm talking about a deep personal secret, something that she explicitly told me to keep just between us. I read it, my brain short-circuiting for a moment. What was I supposed to do with this? Suddenly, the boundaries I'd been trying to maintain shattered. And isn't it funny how, when you're stuck in a tricky place, your mind frantically scans for exit signs that don't exist? I realized in that moment I had to figure out if this was trust, real, earnest trust, or if Lisa was, perhaps unknowingly, using me as a crutch because she didn't have anyone else. Could I keep this up without losing myself? Was I in over my head, or was this a weird, unexpected path to something like friendship? I kept this secret the best I could, but it started affecting me. During meetings, odd moments would strike. Lisa's eyes catching mine when a certain phrase came up, or the way she'd softly sigh whenever the conversation veered off into certain territory. It was like I was squirming under this invisible weight, trying to pretend it was just another day at the office. That same week, Jenny noticed the tension and, over coffee, she laid it out bluntly. Look, you didn't sign up for this. Maybe it's time to draw some lines before you're not just junior copywriter, but therapist, secretary, and emotional punching bag all rolled into one. She was right. But how do you tell your boss, hey, can we keep the therapy out of the strategy meetings? Without sounding completely unprofessional or, worse, cruel. And yet, amidst all the discomfort, something else was happening. I was learning to see Lisa not just as the boss, the creative kraken of agency legends, but as someone messy and real. Someone who struggled. And that made all of this complicated relationship magic both harder to untangle and, at the same time, somehow more meaningful. I wasn't sure where this was headed. Did Lisa even realize what she was asking of me? Or was I just the only person she trusted enough to reveal all this to, by accident or design? For now, all I could do was sit with the chaos, wondering which way to turn and how to keep my own sanity intact in the middle of it all. After the whirlwind of confessions, late-night messages, and secret sharing, something unexpected happened. The dynamic between me and Lisa shifted, not in the way I feared or hoped, but in a way that, looking back, felt almost inevitable. She didn't become less of a boss, but she definitely became more human. I mean, no longer was she just the sharp-tongued creative kraken circling around with impossible demands. She was also someone juggling her own insecurities, doubts, and a pretty heavy emotional load. And even though I was just a junior copywriter, that shared vulnerability created a kind of unspoken understanding between us. One afternoon, after a particularly intense brainstorming session, Lisa pulled me aside, not with another confession or crisis this time, but with a simple, genuine thank you. She said something like, you've surprised me. I didn't expect a junior to actually listen without judgment. It caught me off guard. I mean, I wasn't aiming to be the office counselor, but I guess sometimes people just fall into these unexpected roles. What hit me hardest through this chaos wasn't the volume of her personal stuff, it was seeing how anyone, even someone with the toughest exterior, needed someone to lean on. It was a messy, complicated reminder that leadership isn't just about shouting the loudest or calling the shots. It's also about admitting when you're struggling and finding ways to keep going without losing yourself. And maybe, just maybe, it's about letting someone else in, even if that someone is just the guy who once forgot to restock the coffee. That said, this accidental confidant role wasn't without its challenges. There were days when I felt like I was drowning in responsibility, way beyond my pay grade. Jenny's advice finally clicked. I needed boundaries. So I summoned up the nerve and, during one of those strange, vulnerable moments, I gently said to Lisa something along the lines of, "Hey, I'm here for you, truly. But maybe real therapy is better left to actual therapists." To my surprise, Lisa laughed, a little shaky but genuine. She admitted that, yeah, she'd probably been leaning on me more than anyone would want and that maybe it was time to find some other outlets. That conversation marked a turning point. Lisa started seeing other support, and I got my regular work life back. Though, honestly, the whole experience gave me a new appreciation for what she was juggling and how hard that must be. Professionally, I noticed a change too. I felt more confident, less like a background player. Navigating that weird, messy relationship taught me about communication, empathy, and the weird way vulnerability sometimes connects people across hierarchical lines. It also gave me some stories I probably shouldn't share at the holiday party but secretly appreciate having. Now, I still catch myself wondering how all this would look from the outside. Would anyone want their boss to confide in them? Is it a gift or a ticking time bomb? For me, it was a little bit of both. An awkward, stressful, enlightening ride that made me rethink what it means to really be part of a team and how sometimes chaos can lead to unexpected growth. So yeah, I accidentally stepped into a role I never signed up for, and while it was uncomfortable and confusing at times, it turned out to be one of those strange, real-life learning moments you don't find in a manual. And honestly, I wouldn't erase it even if it meant forever being known in the office as Lisa's secret keeper. Because sometimes the people who seem the most untouchable are the ones who need a little understanding the most.